My body knows how to do it.
It's a girl.
As we speak, every second, a woman gives birth somewhere in the world. It may sound ordinary, but for the woman living it, birth is nothing like that.
Welcome to Born to be Wild, the podcast. We call in guests from Portugal and beyond to share real birth stories and lived experiences, and to explore what maternity care really feels like on the ground.
In this podcast, we invite you to listen, question, and sometimes unlearn what pregnancy, birth, and postpartum are supposed to look like.
For us, wild means staying connected to yourself, your body, and your choices, even when systems make that difficult.
So let's begin.
And if you have a birth plan saying don't want augmentation of labor, for me, well, great. We are in the same path, baby. So let's do it. And then I could say, no, I'm not going to put the oxytocin because this lady doesn't want that. She told me she has it on her birth plan.
Midwives are so much more than medical guides. They hold our joy, but they also hold our fear, and sometimes our grief. They are in the room for the moments that change us forever. And yet we rarely ask them, how are you doing? What did this cost you? And what brought you here?
It's true that in this podcast, we usually focus on the women who gave birth, their stories, their choices, their bodies. But today, we want to do things a bit differently and flip the script, because midwives have stories too, and Filipa is one we think you need to hear.
Yeah, she was already a nurse when she got pregnant. She thought she knew what birth looked like from the inside, but she didn't. She ended up alone in an operating room, lights above her head, no one talking to her, separated from her baby in her very first moments as a mother. And the months that followed were the loneliest of her life.
She felt guilty for not bonding immediately with her daughter, and she had no idea that what happened to her had a name and that it wasn't her fault. That actually thousands of women feel exactly the same way and never say it out loud.
Yeah, but instead of just carrying that with her, she used it. She trained as a doula, then she went back to school to become a midwife. She stepped back into the very system that had let her down, and she had started changing it from the inside. One birth plan at a time. I call that power.
Yes, but she also paid a price for that. In this episode, she talks about what it really costs to be a midwife in Portugal, the impossible workload, the burnout, and the moment she finally said no more.
Yeah, this is a story about turning your own wound into a reason to fight for others. About what happens when someone who has been invisible decides to make sure no one else ever has to feel that way again. Let's go.
Hi, Filipa. Thanks so much for accepting our invitation for this new episode. We are really glad to have you with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really happy for this. I really like to talk about what I do and what I love as my mission path. So I'm really happy to be here with you.
But let's just start with a quick introduction of yourself, who you are, where you are from, and what you're doing today.
So my name is Filipa Piedade. I am a nurse midwife. I attend home births and I'm an independent midwife in Portugal. I am also mother to a 10-year-old girl named Luz. In English, name is Light. And so you can find me in my Instagram page as Filipa Mãe da Luz. It means Filipa, mother of light, which is the name of the girl.
And it's also like dar luz in Portuguese is giving birth, right?
Yes, that's it. Exactly. It's a great coincidence because I was not a midwife when I had her. So it led me to become a midwife after.
We want to hear more about that. So you started as a nurse practitioner, and I can imagine you worked in the hospital for a few years. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, how did your career start?
Yeah. Well, I needed to choose at 18 years old what I wanted to do for a living. And at that stage, I wanted to be a biologist. And I was pretty sure I was going to enter in the biology for the university for studying biology.
Mm.
But by some magical destiny reason, I didn't enter in biology in my first application forms. It was just in my fifth and sixth options that I put it nursing, and I entered in nursing in a nursing school in Coimbra.
Now that we know you, we are actually glad you didn't get the grades to get to biology
Yeah.
because the country needs midwives like you.
It's almost meant to be like it was the fifth or the sixth choice.
And I never thought about that when I was in my schooling years. But when I entered the nursing school, nursing kind of grew up on me, and I wanted to do the difference in people's lives, and that
Yeah.
was really something that connect. Yeah, although when I started working as a nurse, it was super hard. I always felt like something was missing. I don't know how to explain this, but I was a nurse. I liked what I did, but I don't know, something I was not pretty sure about that. At
Yeah.
some point, I did a master degree in palliative care. Yeah,
The end
palliative.
of life.
Yes, the end of life,
Yeah.
right? And I studied palliative care, and it was really great. I loved palliative care. It changed me as a person, it changed me as a professional. It made me more careful and going more deep in what people need and wish. When people get to the end of life, they feel the need of things that we don't really appreciate while we are alive, because we don't know
Mm.
we will not have that forever. And that is really something that is important
Yeah.
in
I
our,
can imagine.
yeah. And it made me more aware.
And maybe also an undervalued part of giving care, no?
Yeah, because I usually use this relationship between palliative care and midwifery care, because there are some parts that really are the same, they are similar. People used to die at home.
Hmm.
People used to die surrounded by their loved ones in their own terms, in their own beds, surrounded by love and care and with space and acceptance in silence sometimes.
Hmm.
And then death became medicalized, and so was birth. And there's
Yeah.
some relationship with these two areas.
Hey, and let's make a bridge to that because, like, at a certain point, you chose a different career path. So you moved away from the palliative care and the emergency care. Tell us a little bit about that. How did that go?
It happens because I became a mother. The truth is
Uh,
that. And my birth to Luz, my daughter,
yeah.
changed me as a person, and it ended up changing me as a professional as well.
Hmm.
It was really a difficult experience for me. The birth was not what I expected. I felt I was not ready for that. Despite of being a nurse and knowing things, technical things, I was not ready for what maternity and motherhood brought me. This was really difficult for me.
You want to talk about a bit about your birth?
Well, now I know what happened, but at the time, I didn't know what happened. I started having contractions, and I was just in my early stage of labor when they admitted me in the delivery room. I was 4 centimeters dilated. I was having the contractions at home. I went to my bath, and that was the best part of my labor and birth. Being at home, in my own bathtub, managing my contractions, connecting to the process. It was intense, but I enjoy it. Then my husband told me, maybe you are doing a little bit of noise. Maybe you should go to the hospital. Maybe it's time. But now I
Hmm.
know that I could stay there longer at home. But I didn't have that support to help me
Why did he think it was time?
because I was vocalizing.
Okay, so he thought that was a sign of going to the hospital.
And that we were just somehow making too much noise for our neighbors because we lived in an apartment.
Yeah. Okay.
I felt like I had to because of that situations and not because of what I felt
And
inside.
what did you actually need on that moment?
Needed support, someone to just be with me or let me just labor and
Mhm.
my contractions, but my husband wasn't ready for that. Now I know he wasn't ready for that. That's why I usually talk a lot with husbands of my clients to make them realize that birth is loud.
Yeah.
Birth is an animal.
Can be loud.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so then you arrived in the hospital,
Yeah.
and what happened then?
Well, I was admitted, all the protocols, IV, every 4 hours vaginal examination. Nothing was happening because my labor stalled as soon as I got into the hospital. They gave me an epidural. At that time, I didn't need it to ask for it because they immediately offered the epidural. Since you are here
Okay.
and you are in pain, let's do an epidural, okay? And I okay.
It's
I
part of the
Yeah, why
protocol.
didn't
not?
knew
Yeah.
better. I didn't knew better at that time.
Okay.
And so after the epidural, nothing happened anymore. They tried oxytocin, synthetic oxytocin, but my daughter didn't react well to the oxytocin and they stopped and they tried stop and start the oxytocin several times. They didn't allow me to go out of bed. Every time that I went out of bed, I was being reprehended by the medical team. They entered the room and screamed. It was really something violent. I felt it. I felt like violent. So I was just in bed waiting for something to happen. At that point, I was just wishing for a cesarean section. And in the end, that's what I got. Yeah. And was a cesarean section. I felt really scared. The operation room, it's cold, it's whitish. I only saw the lights above my head and people talking different things, and no one was talking to me. They didn't allow my husband to be with me there. And when my daughter was born, I realized that she was crying, but they dressed her first and just gave her to me for a few seconds so I could meet her. And then they sent the baby girl to the father.
Just to make sure people understand also their rights in the operating room, the husband can be there. Like, it's not normal that they ask your husband to be away, right? Because it was not a vital emergency.
Yeah, my daughter was in distress
Mm.
and it was considered emergency C-section. Well, the truth is, you have the right to have your partner with you the whole time, even if you're having a cesarean section. Although the law always also says that it's the medical team that needs to allow that. So when you have that little thing in the law, you can always turn the right
Yeah.
to a different
Yeah.
path.
And Filipa, was C-section something you ever imagined? Like, was it a plan B you were prepared for, or not at all?
No, not at all. I never thought I was going to have a C-section. I believed I was going to have a natural birth,
Yeah.
but this was not what happened. I felt it
Mhm.
like a traumatic experience. It also affected me in my postpartum period.
What was the specific traumatic experience you remember?
I felt disrespected.
Mhm.
I felt I was being treated like a young child. I felt like I had no autonomy. I was no longer being the owner of the process and of the birth. The birth was not something that I was doing, was something that happened to me,
Mhm.
and they did something to me. It felt like a traumatic experience. I know for
Yeah.
some women this is just normal, but not for me. For me, this was a traumatic experience. And then in the postpartum, I felt some difficulty bonding with my child. I never had
Hmm.
the skin to skin. I didn't get them at all. She was already dressed. I only had face to face for some seconds. And then she was brought to to the father. So
Wow.
when I got to the recovery room, she was there, dressed, waiting for me, and she started breastfeeding right away. She was really keen on that. She was hungry. It went well. Breastfeeding went well. Some difficulties in the beginning, but it went well. But the bonding was compromised.
Yeah.
Now I know why, but I felt guilty about it being a mother.
Can
And I believe
imagine.
there are women feeling guilty because they are not connecting, they are not bonding immediately with the child.
Yeah. What do you want to say to yourself looking back at it? What would you say to yourself?
I already talked a lot with myself about that. That's why
Yeah.
I And that's why I choose to be part of the change from within.
Okay.
And that's why I choose to this path of helping women to have a different experience than what I had. But I
Yeah.
didn't thought about midwifery right away. I thought about why don't I become a postpartum doula? That's what
Mm-mm.
I wanted to be because that was the period I struggled the most because I didn't had help. So I was struggling during the postpartum period, and I wanted to be a postpartum doula to help women during that stage. And that's what I did. But it's really difficult to sell the postpartum as a service. When you don't know what you are going to go through, you don't buy that service.
Especially with first time moms, no?
They always think, oh, but my husband will help. But your husband is also going through the postpartum period and it's also going through an identity crisis and is not going to be so helpful that you can feel supported like you should. And I've been seeing this happening with a lot of women that I care for.
Yeah.
But at that stage, at being a postpartum doula, I felt I was not doing enough as well because I saw women traumatized by the births they had. And
Mm-hmm.
there was so little of my support that I could do. I need to send them for psychology support as well. And I thought, well, all of this begins with birth and how they experience birth as well. So why not study more about this? Why not understand what's happening and why is birth being such a traumatic experience for so many women? It's
You, want,
not normal.
you wanted to prevent the trauma.
Well, I can do whatever I can do, but I'm not that superhero. But I wanted to be a part of the change, even if just a little bit. And so I went to the midwifery school then. And as a midwife in the hospital, there was something about the protocols and the routines in hospitals that were a, a big pressure on me. I didn't support that. It was not what I believed in augmentation of labor, active management of labor. That's what they call it. I don't
Hmm.
believe in that. I think this is not good for the women, and certainly it's not good for the baby. And this is protocol in hospitals. And if you have a birth plan saying don't want augmentation of labor, woo, for me, well, great. We are in the same path, baby. So let's do it. And then I could say, no, I'm not going to put the oxytocin because this lady doesn't want that. She told me she has it on her birth plan. So I advise
Yeah.
everybody to write the birth plan. If you are going to a public hospital, you have midwives with you, and a lot of them see things like me, and they are pressed to the protocols, to the augmentation of labor. And if you are my partner in that, I am your partner with that. You are my priority. So, not the protocols, you are. So, if you have your birth plan with that, that's really good for me. My work, I always try to do the best I could, but I was always checking if someone was going to enter the room and interrupt and say things that could compromise the oxytocin bubble that woman was in. If you open the door off often, that oxytocin blows up and you
Mm-hmm.
have adrenaline and cortisol. And this was always being disrupted. This natural process was being disrupted, and people didn't even understand what they were doing and what was the consequence of that.
I remember when we talked together, you also mentioned burnout. And I think midwife burnout is something that we rarely hear about, even though it affects so many. Can you describe what it actually feels like, what you lose? Can you tell us more?
Midwives in hospitals work beyond what's it's human acceptable. Uh, we are always running. And for you to know, the safe ratios are 1 to 1, one midwife for one woman in the active labor. Do you know what the ratio is in a hospital? It's 1 to 4. You have one midwife to 4 women that are laboring and giving birth. And the bureaucracy around that, it's completely insane. You need to register every little thing that you do and every hour. And when a baby is born, you need to do all the bureaucracy of the birth, the papers. You don't have someone to help you to do that. It's all on you.
Mhm.
And then you go and run for an emergency C-section, and you don't have lunch, you don't have dinner, you don't have toilet breaks. I ended up arriving home after midnight, super tired, hungry because I didn't had the time to eat, and I couldn't fall asleep because I was overstimulated.
What was the breaking point for you? Because at a certain point you were like, "Okay, I'm not gonna do this anymore." And that must have been a hard decision because you see your colleagues working super hard, and I can imagine if you think like, "Oh, and I'm leaving the hospital now and I'm kinda like contributing to the problem." And at the same time, of course you're not because you chose a different path, right?
Yeah, it was hard. But the last time I was there, I felt disrespected by colleagues
Mm,
because they were running for a cesarean section. I was the only one being there in the room for all
yeah,
women. And then
yeah,
there was a lack of communication, and they wanted me to enter the room and the other nurse to come out. But there was a
yeah.
lack of communication, and they didn't manage that well. And they were disrespectful with me. And I told them, no more. This is the last time you see me here because we are all stressed, we are all working too much, but this is not something that I will admit. So I
Yeah.
went, that was the last drop of the bottle.
Yeah.
So it was a bold move, but also a survival mode for you to just quit and start your own activity. So tell us this new chapter. When was it? When did you start? And how did that feel?
I started as an home birth midwife with a colleague of mine that is Sandra Pedro. She's also a
Mhm.
midwife. We met in Hospital de Cascais. We were
Mhm.
two midwives looking for the same thing. She believes in
Yeah.
the same thing that I believe.
You had a connection.
We had a connection, yes.
Yeah. It's very
And she
important.
invited me for a coffee. And wow, love, it's a date. Let's go for a coffee. And we talked about home birth. I was a bit scared about that because being in a hospital setting, you see a lot of things going the wrong way. And you feel a little bit stressed. What if this happens to me during an home birth? This is something that I don't know if I can deal with that. But we believed in ourselves and in our work, and we started that while I was still working in the delivery room in the hospital. I did both things at the same
Mhm.
time. And the more I did my work as an home birth midwife, the more I wanted to change things in the delivery room. And the
Mhm.
more I assisted totally physiological births, the more I believe that what we were doing in the hospital was wrong.
Mhm.
And I believe 90% of people that is working in the hospital setting never truly assisted a physiological birth all the way through.
Mhm.
They don't know what it is. They don't believe in home births because they never assisted a totally physiological birth.
Okay, so we talked about your time in the hospital and what it did to you. Um, but I was also curious, how would you describe the role of the midwives today, specifically in Portugal, compared to other countries in the world?
Okay. Well, the role of the midwife in Portugal can be the same as in other countries, but people are just not aware of it. You need a doctor to prescribe an ultrasound
Exactly.
and the blood test. And I know what blood tests you need to do, but I need to ask someone else to prescribe them for you.
Yeah.
The rest, I can do every single step of the way.
Yeah.
I can be with you during all pregnancy appointments. You don't need to see a doctor if you are low risk pregnancy. I can be with you during birth if it's a low risk birth, if it's a physiological birth. And I can be with you in the postpartum period that
Yeah.
we usually have one appointment with the doctor, just the 6 weeks checkup. And we have three appointments in the postpartum period. So it's continuity of care. It's what women deserve. It's this continuity of care. But in Portugal, we have these legal issues that don't allow us to do the full spectrum of our competencies.
Okay, Filipa, as a last question, I would love to ask you if you could say one thing to all the women still hesitating between the system and something that feels more like themselves, what would that be?
A place for a woman to give birth is the place where the women feel safe. And this is not telling women that they all should be in home birth because they should not. There are women that feel safer in hospital settings with obstetricians, and that is okay. You just need to know what it feels safer for you because your hormones will work with you in every setting if you feel safe and if you feel respected. And this is what you need to ask during pregnancy to your provider. What makes me feel safe and respected? And see if that provider is the one for you. You always have the option. If you have a low risk pregnancy, you have every option in the book.
Yeah.
So, for a low risk pregnancy, you can choose to be just assisted by a midwife during all your pregnancy, during the home birth, and during the postpartum period. If you have some risk associated, you can have an obstetrician and a midwife with you. This also helps you to have good choices and to be more aware of the system. So it's not one of the other. You can have both if you have some risk in your pregnancy and birth. It's
Yeah.
not just a midwifery led process with you.
Yeah.
You need someone extra to check you up. But you have all the places that, uh, not birth centers, because there are not birth centers in Portugal, unfortunately, but you can have the midwifery led care in a home birth, or you can have the better thing of the two worlds, being assisted by a midwife and an obstetrician, or you can choose to be all obstetrician process and no midwifery there because that's what you believe in. It's up to you.
It's a matter of confidence, respect.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you need to feel respected.
That sounds super simple, but in reality, it takes a bit more like people like you, Filipa, who stand up for the women who don't feel respected. And really, every woman deserves it. Every woman deserves to feel respected and to be treated like a queen in the hospital when she delivers a baby and when she brings new life, when she is dar a luz at that moment. So, thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Filipa, and also sharing your thoughts and your vision on birth and the whole maternity care system, but also postpartum with us today. We loved hearing this.
It was also very inspiring to hear how you used trauma as a strength to make things better, to change the system from the inside,
Exactly.
to provide better care for the woman. So thank you so much for what you're doing. And I think we do need more midwives. And I hope that this episode might highlight your work and maybe create some new career choices for the people listening.
Yeah, I really hope women feel more respected because women deserve to be more respected and they should be birthing like goddess. That is what they are. So I want every woman to feel like a goddess while giving birth to their child.
That's amazing. We go for that.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Born to Be Wild, the podcast. If you want to continue the conversation, you can find us on Instagram at borntobewild.pt and birth mode. We would love to hear from you.
All sources and references mentioned in this episode are in the show notes below. And if you enjoy this episode, of course, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. It's really the best way to help us grow. See you next time!